Welcome to TRB Live. That's right, live. We are back, baby! And I am John, and that is James and Lacey with me here as always, and we are here to talk to you about Ahsoka Part 5, Shadow Warrior, and what an episode it was. It sent fandom into a frenzy, and for good reason, because wow, what an episode. And there's a lot to talk about, and we are going to do just that. But before I do, James, we're wearing the same shirt. Let's just get it out of the way.
Buddies and a couple, sure.
I thought I was in the clear because you had worn it like somewhat recently, and I hadn't in a while. So I thought, all right, well, I'll do this, and he'll surely be wearing something else.
Couple of buddies and matching shirts.
Mine, I had to get mine customized. I had to get my sleeves stretched out a little.
Oh, you're so lame.
All right. Well, we want to thank everybody who are joining us live here in the chat, or if you're listening on your favorite podcast app, however you're taking in the episode, thank you so much for being with us here at TRB. It means a great deal. We're going to have a really fun show tonight for a lot of reasons. We're going to be announcing a giveaway contest in just a few moments here, but also to talk about this episode. And we're going to rate it on the Rosario scale, which might, spoiler alert, might be one of the higher or highest rated episodes that Star Wars has given us from live action, but we'll get to that in a bit. But before that, make sure you're subscribed to the channel, youtube.com/@theResistanceBroadcast, or on your favorite podcast app. For some reason, we've been getting like bot spammed on Apple with 1-star ratings. I don't know what's going on with that, but if
man.
yeah, there was another one today that just said ... and it's like these got to be like bots or something. I don't know. Maybe
it's
like
weird.
Spotify is sending bots to spam us there, so
or people just have too much time, because like the fact any person that feels the need to like go to any show or podcast to be like 1 star, okay, don't you have something positive to do?
2 back-to-back sounds a little strange to me, but anyway, if you have Apple and you can look us up there on Apple Podcasts and rate us 5 stars to balance out the dark side, we appreciate that very much. All right. Last thing before we get into the show. Look, studios, let's get it together. We have shows that need to be made, people that need to get back to work, and we don't want Star Wars to get pushed out further than it already is. So let's make that deal. Let's get the writers and the actors back with a deal that works for everybody, including the future, and also not taking away jobs from people with artificial intelligence. But that being said, we are here to celebrate Ahsoka and Dave Filoni, who is clearly stepping into new territory as the king of Star Wars live action television right now. So very excited to get going with this episode. But before we do, Lacey, do we want to get into the contest first and then the initial super chats?
Yeah, sure. So we bought this a while ago. We prepared for this moment. We got a chatterback chopper. It's a little, there you go. From Hasbro. We purchased this ourselves. When they announced it back for Celebration, we knew it was gonna be something really cool. We actually saw it in person at Celebration. The guy was like demoing the one there, and it talks, it moves. It's really cool. It's something that's great for collectors, as well as something that's really fun and family friendly. Like kids are like, my daughter's been begging me to open this, and I'm like, no, stop. So the way you can enter is very similar to, hold on. There we go. The way you can enter, the way you can enter is similar to what we did with the last Sabine bust. So you can comment on this video, this episode, and let us know what you think is your big speculation, wild theory for next episode, part 6. Or you can quote tweet the episode on Twitter and also tell us what you think is your wild theory for the next episode. If you enter in both places, you're entered twice to win. So good luck, and we'll announce the winner next week. And just like we did last time, so everybody knows, we do pick one winner for YouTube and one winner for Twitter. And when we put them in a hat and we pick a name, so it is totally legit. So good luck.
And keep it to the comments of the video, not the chat.
Yes, not in the live chat, in the actual comments once the video is not live anymore, which sadly
you can do in the chat too, but that's just for funsies.
Yeah, just for
and
funsies.
while you're there, thumbs up and subscribe. You know what I mean?
The whole thing, all of it. Yeah. Now we do have a bunch of super chats to I guess, kick things off before we get into the
We
Rosario
do.
scale.
Wow.
Because things ready to pop. So let's get through these super chats.
Yeah, so first up we have Cal. What up, Cal? Cal Beckworth. How's it going, man?
Thank you, Kyle.
Filoni is, I'm just making sure that he is, in fact, I think he just showed up at first, but he wasn't the first person to comment. So don't worry if you were the first. Don't worry. Kyle said, Filoni is a master storyteller, and we still have 3 episodes left. I think you mean, Kyle, we only have 3 episodes left.
I was going to say it's a glass half full.
Love that. So happy to see Ahsoka smiling. Sound design was top notch. I couldn't agree more, Kyle. I just watched this episode again before the show, and the sound design is insane. Rosario, 10 Rosarios. Thanks, TRB. No,
thank you, Kyle. Appreciate
thank
it.
you, Kyle. Joseph, what up, man? He said, first of all, thanks for the super chat. He said, this was absolute perfection. A top 3 Star Wars moment for me. Thrilled to share it with y'all. Thanks for being awesome. So, guys, I'm being old right now, and I'm going to put my glasses on so I can actually read these. It's looking a little
Thank you for being awesome, Joseph. Appreciate it.
You are awesome, Joseph.
Thank you.
Freezy2324. It's not a show without Freezy. What up, man? He said, Ahsoka saying, I won't fight you. And Anakin replying, I've heard that before. Totally was a callback to Luke in Return of the Jedi. Dave is the GOAT. There were, in a lot of these episodes, obviously, Dave has written them all. There have been these moments like this that you're like, oh, I caught that. And you feel really smart.
I just caught that his name is Freezy, but he's on a beach. It doesn't make any sense.
I know.
Continuity error.
I love that location, though. It's a great photo. Next is Timothy Ferguson. What up, Timothy? Thank you so much for the super chat. He said, hands down my favorite Star Wars episode so far. I only wish I could have seen it in a theater. I agree. It was a tough ticket to get. And I believe this is Timothy's first super chat. So thank you so much for joining us. And thank you for being here. We're happy to have you. Man. Yeah, this was insane. And I heard they were turning people away, which is kind of crazy. I guess they over-promised tickets and then didn't.
What?
Yeah.
That's
some people drove away. Yeah. Next is Darth Snips. What up, Snips? Hey. It's your day again. Your day to shine. Thanks for the super chat. She said, won't be able to make it tonight, but wanted to say how much I love this episode. 5, Snips and Sky Guy and Rex. My heart is happy. Can't wait to listen tomorrow. TRB, love you guys. May the force be with you. We love you too.
Thank you.
Darth Snips. This chatterback chopper is calling your name, you know? You better enter. She said her favorite character is Chopper. Steven, what up, man? Thanks for the super chat. He said, what a fantastic episode. And who was cutting onions 3 minutes into the episode? We're going to get into it. I've never felt more emotional watching a Star Wars episode than this one. I don't know why. I was so emotional.
More than Mando saying goodbye to Grogu?
I actually didn't get upset about Mando saying bye to Grogu. I got more upset that Luke Skywalker was there. And by upset, I mean emotional. I was crying when he showed up. And I was like, oh my God, he's actually here. And then Grogu, I was like, whatever, he'll be back eventually. But whatever. I don't know. This episode really, really got to me, but we'll get into that in a second. Thanks, Steven.
Thank you. Yeah.
And yes, I was cutting onions. Jolton Jedi DiMaggio, what up, man? Yo, look at that. Is that Revan? Darth Revan? I think it is.
I think so.
Evening all. This was a great episode of Ahsoka. Hope you enjoyed it as much as I did. Much love, Jolton Jedi DiMaggio.
Thanks,
did.
Buddy.
Much love.
We did love it.
Thank you.
Next is Nick Kratz. What up, Nick? He said 10 Rosarios and 1 Carson Teva.
Oh, bonus. Bonus face.
Paul is killing it in these episodes. He's got this kind of snarkiness. He's the character that's like Jim in The Office that brings it back down to human level of what are we doing here? What is going, what?
Yeah.
You know what I
He's
mean?
the only person who's been in all 3 as of now, right? No,
he's the only. So Ahsoka has, but he's the only character that kind of bridges them all, seemingly.
Yeah, because Ahsoka did show up in both Mandalorian and Book of Boba Fett, right?
Yeah. And Ahsoka.
Mm-hmm.
She was also in Ahsoka too.
Stubby One Kenobi. Nice. Oh, is that a puppy? Looks like a puppy. Yeah. Thanks for your chat. He said, we have a father and a daughter who is the son in my question? I'm going to say it's Ezra, but most likely Maul. 10 out of 10 Rosarios. He's talking about the Mortis arc. That's a big thing. Everybody's wondering how does that play into this? Because as soon as you bring Dave up, Dave Filoni, you got to think, okay, World Between Worlds, Mortis arc. What does this mean? And
it means Palpatine.
Shh, don't say that name. I don't want him
I wonder
here.
if they really do go down that route of like Anakin was supposed to take over the father, and she obviously has her connection to the daughter. Like, what does that mean for the son? Who is the son? How will they tie that in? I don't know, man. And it feels like Filoni would be the one to tell it, but I just don't.
You got us thinking, Stubby One.
He's not under.
I figured it out. It's
Anakin.
Jason Sydulla.
Oh, he's not under a shining star. He was a shining star in this episode.
He's the son, though, literally.
Right.
He is a son.
Thank you, Stubby One. Thank you guys so much.
Yep. All right. Appreciate that so much. That's awesome. Thank you all. It means a lot. And now it's time to see if we're going to break the Rosario scale. So what we do here is each of us gives our score from 0 to 10 about this episode specifically. Halves count. So you can do 8.5, 7.5, 9.5, 0 to 10. And then we put our averages together, get our score, and then we check in with the resistance base and see what our resistance officers scored it and get to some of their comments. So I'm going to kick this one off. And I gave this episode a crispy 9.5. I thought this was...
People are going to be so mad at you.
For a 9.5?
Boo this man. Everyone boo him.
For a 9.5. I'll tell you why it's a 9.5. 1, 0 Baylan Skull. So that's an automatic half-point deduction. And then 2, I just think we've spent a little too much time on the CTOS set at Manhattan Beach in this show. And I'm glad that we finally left it. But beyond that, it is elite and one of, if not the best episode of Star Wars TV. Because I've only given out, I think, 110 before. And it was the finale of Kenobi because of Obi-Wan and Vader.
That's the first 9. I just saw 9 pop up. I was like, that's the first not 10.
Yeah. So 9.5 for me. James, what did you give this one?
I also gave it a 9.5 because you look at the episode and you're like, there's stuff going on here that's just absolutely incredible. And it has to be higher than of what I've rated other episodes. I will be slightly critical of this episode that when I went back on my rewatch, there are parts that I'm like, I know what happens here. And this is long in the tooth. These sections, they drag out a little too long. Most of it has to do with like Hera and them kind of standing over. It's not that the stuff they don't say is important, but they show a lot of it. And there's a lot of talking about searching and stuff. And I feel like some of those parts drug a little, especially when you look at the runtime for the episode. It's long. It's a long episode. And I feel like it could have been trimmed back a little bit. But that's really mostly, I think, the only real negative I have of the episode, because there's not like design problems, music problems, character problems, nothing.
No.
It's like all of this is like pretty dang perfect. So on that, like, where does it stand up against the episodes? I'm saying like it's probably my favorite episodes so far. So you got to go up, but going up from a 9 means 9.5.
Yeah, it's a great episode when people are upset that you give it a 9.5.
Yeah. Well, what was the last one? Is like everybody who rated it a 10, then what was it? Was it episode 4? Right?
Yeah.
Just the previous one?
There's been a lot of 10s.
Like,
people are loving the series.
Yeah, so those are equal.
Lacey,
in your mind? Right, yeah.
Part 5. What do you got on the Rosario scale?
An absolute 10. 10. Perfect episode. It was perfect. There was nothing I would change. I wouldn't change the length. I wouldn't change the writing. I wouldn't change acting. I wouldn't change anything about it. It's absolute perfect Star Wars. It was magical. And these guys know, because we're in the Discord chat together, that as soon as I finished watching it, I wrote 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. It's a 10.
Yep.
It has been easily one of my favorite episodes of Star Wars ever created. And it is some of the best storytelling we've gotten from Disney Lucasfilm since they bought Lucasfilm. Dave Filoni killed it. I have no notes. Perfect.
No notes. You're
no notes
on this episode.
I mean, like, no negative notes. How about that? No negative notes.
Okay. Very good. Very good. So for us, that is a 9.7.
It should be a 10.
Which ties our high for a single episode of Disney live action Star Wars. I believe Kenobi episode part 6 also got a 9.7 from us. And the third highest was The Rescue. The season finale of Mando season 2 was a 9.6.
I was going to say, how did that not get higher?
We have rated this tied for the top live action Star Wars episode on Disney Plus to date.
And it was season 2 Mandalorian ending?
Yeah.
Okay.
All right. We check in with our patrons. And as you can see, if you're watching on YouTube, you see all the Rosarios filling up the screen for the TRB score. And now James is going to work some magic and go to the patron score, which is also a 9.7. So we are what do they call it? Symbiotes? We are one with the patrons. We are one with the resistance officers.
We're a dyad.
Collectively. We're a dyad in the Rosario. 9.7.
We are 97% a dyad.
Yeah, right. So great score by them. I think that is the second highest score for our patrons. I believe they gave a 9.8 to might have been also the Kenobi finale.
I need to go back and make the graph that says this is what patrons gave, this is what we gave, this is what James gave, this is what John gave for every episode, and just see where we.
Couple of comments here. Some of these folks might be in the chat, but we have Adam Furley, who gave it a 10 out of 10, said greatest Star Wars television show ever, and the best episode too. So he's saying Ahsoka's the best series, and this was the best of that. So the only way to go from here is down for episode 6 through 8.
Yeah.
Why would you say that?
Just kidding. Jamie Gerber chimes in next. I believe we saw Jamie in the chat. Jamie said, I'm pulling a Spinal Tap and turning it up to 11. The quality of this story is just incredible. It's crazy that Ahsoka debuted in the Clone Wars all those years ago, and we're still getting incredibly powerful stories. Kudos to Dave Filoni for such an amazing show. So a lot of that's like what we're hearing though in those comments, what we're saying here, that seems to be the norm of what people are saying about this episode. So is Dave Filoni uniting Star Wars fans? Remains to be seen because the show's not over yet. We know how that can go sometimes.
Get ready for tens or disappointment.
Yeah, right. We are about to hop into our main discussion of this episode, and we're going to start things off with our favorite moments, quotes, or shots. But before we do that, Lacey, we have a couple of super chats we got to get to.
We do. First, we have Matt. Hey, Matt, how's it going?
Thanks, Matt.
Love. Is that Cliffs of Moher behind you? Love it. Been there. Awesome. He said, hey, all. If Anakin was Ahsoka's ghost from Christmas past, will we see him again for more? These relatable life lessons is why I love Star Wars and TRB. Smiley face.
Thanks,
love
Matt.
you too.
Appreciate it, man.
So what do you guys think we're gonna see? I think we're gonna not see more Anakin. I think this is it. I think this episode was the Anakin episode, and we're moving on. I think we might hear him, but we won't see him.
Yeah, I think we might hear him again. I don't know about see him, but I don't think this is the last of Anakin yet.
So, am I wrong on this? But I was waiting for the trailer line. You can do this, Ahsoka. I believe in you, or whatever. I don't think you ever said that.
They used it again too in another promo today. They used it again.
So I think at least voice we could see him again in this series, but I don't think this is the regular go-to thing for her that when she needs help, he's going to pop up. So don't think that.
Right.
Or think that and just say I'm wrong.
Yeah.
I mean, it's possible. Yeah, totally.
Yeah.
All right. Next up is William. Hey, William. How's it going? Thanks for the super chat. He said just became an admiral on Patreon. Oh my God. Thank you, William.
Dude.
We're so excited to have you. Been watching and listening for a while, and it felt it was time to support this amazing podcast and trio.
Oh,
we appreciate it, William. We're so happy to have you. You're going to love it.
Thank you, William.
You're going to love it.
Now you can hop into our bi-monthly chats that we do also, which gets...
And Discord, which I will get back to you probably tomorrow morning. So.
Yeah.
Q&A.
Thank you.
All right, after
Thank you, William. And welcome to the base. And anyone who's a resistance officer in the chat, welcome, William. He's in the mix. Admiral. Grand Admiral. William.
Grand Admiral, yep.
All right, let's get into this episode. We'll start with our favorite moment or quote or shot. So I'm sure there's going to be the term rack involved or dolly. in a few moments here because we're going to start things off with
Actually,
Lacey.
Dave didn't use any real. He used one rack focus, which was on to show Hera Sydulla like realizing that Jason was hearing something outside of just water. That was like the only real rack focus, and it was like to bring it into like her. But that being said, I feel like one of you guys is going to say this, so I'm not going to say it because it's like the one shot that everybody loved in this episode. So I'm not going to say it.
Take it because mine is not the conventional.
Well, I have two shots that aren't the same. I know, but I like to give varying shots. It gives different points of view. So I don't want to say the same thing. So I'm going to let someone else say it. But the shot where Ahsoka says that she chooses to live, which I think overall, when you watch this episode, it plays out very much like an animated movie and not like a live action movie. I think Dave's pull to the animation side of things and his way of seeing things is very much through an animated lens. Obviously, we're seeing live action Rebels, but it was very clear in this episode to me. Like, it felt like an anime. It felt like kind of this mystical animated movie that took Star Wars like a different way, which I loved. But the shot was when Ahsoka decides that she wants to live, and it goes to a wide shot, and the whole kind of scene condenses with water to like the one plane that she's standing on. And the sound design, the lighting in this episode is perfect. Like it's just so cool. And the noise it makes when everything kind of like compresses and it turns back into water is just so sick. I loved it. So it's less of a camera operated move. I'm sorry, guys. It's more of like a visual effects, like very cool lighting sound design shot for me. And that to me was one of my top ones.
Very cool. Great shot. Great moment. James, you're up. What was your favorite moment, shot, or quote from part 5?
We can do quote now too.
We've always been able to. You guys are just always about the framing.
You always say shot or moment.
You say shot or moment. You do.
It says quote in the notes.
I know, but we usually talk about quotes in discussion anyway.
So I think, there's a ton. So I'm going to pick this one out because I thought it would be similarly different to what Lacey was saying. But I love seeing young Ahsoka during the Siege of Mandalore scene. Specifically, there's one shot before Anakin shows up where she's like fighting some people and she's doing a bunch of like acrobatic stuff. And I'm like, oh, they made it work. Like have felt like Ahsoka in live action has sort of been like yoga-y and not so much like gymnastics-y, you know? But somehow like in this, I was like, yep, that's how she fights. And it was just so cool to see. And they gave her this moment where she like knocks somebody down on the ground. And when she stands up, she's in this like pose that is very like season 7 Ahsoka. And they have the clone troopers running behind her that have the face paint and all that. And it was just like this moment of like so much coming together. Lacey, you said, I know we're watching live action Rebels. This was live action Clone Wars.
Oh yes. Yep.
I mean, it was absolutely nuts to see it. And you're like, I can't believe what I'm looking at on the screen right now. Like, we'll get to it later, but Anakin, perfect. I don't know how
he
to
looked
say it
amazing. Hayden
there's not a hiccup.
He literally said, hey, remember all those people that doubted me or made comments about my acting? What now? He killed it this episode. Killed it.
Yeah.
He looks so good too. Like, I hope I look that good.
When you get de-aged?
Yeah, when you get de-aged.
Well, when you get, he wasn't that de-aged. He looks good.
I don't know. I can't even tell. I'm just like,
even in
Obi-Wan, I'm like,
here's my thing.
But like, they just buy it. I don't know.
So my favorite moment was from this whole part of the episode too. But real quick, like just thinking about it, like when I see this de-aging in this episode, which I thought was perfection, and he did look like he looked in 2005 to me. Even the like sometimes they botch the wigs where you're like, that looks a little off.
Or it
like
comes
that,
a little
nailed
out of
that
place.
too.
Yeah.
That looked perfect too. And it made me like really ask more questions about what the heck happened with Obi-Wan Kenobi. because he was supposed to be even younger there, and they're like, he's just going to be 42, and you're just going to have to deal with it. And we're like,
The braid
okay.
was. You were like, oh.
I don't know
Yeah,
if that's
didn't
on
look right.
Deborah Chow because the directors ultimately make the call on final, choices for editing and stuff, or it was a budget thing, but it makes me scratch my head because this looked so good. And maybe Filoni was like, we got to put that budget into that because the fans they know. But my favorite moment was the very end when Anakin is Darth Vader, this is the first time we're actually seeing full formed Darth Vader had he not been injured. Like
Right.
Anakin in Revenge of the Sith was technically called Darth Vader, but he was still Anakin. He was still he could have still gone back at some point.
They made him look sickly too, like his skin was like a
This
yellowish
was how
color.
he spoke. Yeah, how
Yeah.
he spoke and everything. But that last moment when he's got the Sith eyes and he lowers his head and she says, "I choose to live," and he picks his head up and his
Oh my
eyes
God,
are back
yes.
to normal. But it's not even that. You see him transform every nuance of his face back to the non-tortured version of Anakin.
Hayden killed that transition so
that
hard.
moment for me was perfect.
Right.
And the little
right
smirk he gives, I was like,
I had a thought in my mind and I almost said it because I was trying to examine this earlier. Do you think that they de-aged him when he's Anakin and did not de-age him when he's Vader? Because I think that when he's in that state, when he's got the eyes and everything, I think he looks stressed, older, whatever.
Yeah.
And then he puts his head down. And when he comes back up, he's back de-aged, clean, younger, fresher.
I think it's more of just the, like Lacey was saying, just the dark side and what it does to you. And like he looked tortured and twisted and uncomfortable and in pain.
Those subtle choices that Hayden made, though, he looked so good. And it was like the way he used his mouth, the eyes, everything.
The eyes.
You just see it come over his whole body and like, oh my gosh, what a moment for him.
Yeah, I don't want to take anything away from his acting either because I understand that. Like he's like, no, I was this and then I was that. I did that. So, yeah.
His lightsaber twirling, oh my God. The moment in the beginning where they start the fight, which I love that we're kind of like in this middle of the episode part, but that's fine. Right. Where he does the crazy spin move that he loves to do that he said he learned like early on when he got the role. He did it again, but like to a point that you're like, this guy has not stopped twirling a lightsaber for 23 years.
Well, let's get
But I do want to mention one thing really quick because we didn't bring this moment up. Semperfi Danny said it in the comments. I'm going to bring it up because this was the one I was thinking about. The transition scene, but that flash between Anakin and Vader and the smoke. This is the scene that everybody was losing their minds over, and I equally lost my mind over to the point that I showed it to my husband last night. I was like, look at this moment. It's the zoom out from Ahsoka to the wide shot of her standing there to him walking through the smoke, and then it cuts to Vader, cuts back to him. Beautifully done. It was
There's
so
two.
good.
There's sort of like one where he's walking away and one where he's walking forward, but I think most people talk about the one where he's walking away.
Walking away, and when he came forward, it flashes again because they perfectly have the cape go to his sleeve, like it's so clean.
Yeah.
But yeah, the walk away was just a very cool kind of. I don't know if it's visual effects necessarily. To me, it looked like they shot it twice, once with Anakin and once with Vader, and they're just like perfectly timing the lighting. The lighting in this episode, oh my gosh, is just so great. It's so great in all those scenes.
I just want to remind people, like, let's all like stop for 1 second and think about this. That
I'm like out of breath how excited I am about this episode.
Dave Filoni is soon to be making a full-length, full-budget feature Star Wars film.
Can't wait.
Just think about that again, just for a moment. Right?
It's just wild. Like I have it pulled up and I'm like just kind of clicking through. When there are scenes when you pause on Anakin standing there and you're like, that's Revenge of the Sith. 100%.
Oh yeah, exactly.
So
100%. That's Revenge of the Sith.
I want to find out what they did with this show, and that has to be the blueprint because it
made me feel
perfect.
like Dave Filoni made Revenge of the Sith. You know, it's that good. It's like that close to George. It's perfect.
Let's get to this now because
which is why he did this one now. We know it's not Thrawn and Ezra. It was because Anakin was so much in it. So he probably was like, no one's touching this except me.
Mm-hmm. I think it was actually Anakin. I don't think it was a vision.
No,
I don't think it was a dream. I think it was actually him, but a weird sort of version of him in the Force that's sort of like all of him.
Are you guys serious?
It's him waiting for her.
No, man. I'm like, well, that's definitely ruled out. It cannot be him as a person.
And I'll tell you why it's him. Because
that's crazy.
Because she says, "I will not fight you," and he says, "I've heard that before." And she, if it was
Doesn't
in
know
her
that.
mind, she wouldn't have known that Luke
Yeah.
did that. It's a memory of Anakin's that's organic to only Anakin that he is bringing up in that conversation, which to me proves beyond a shadow of a doubt that this is the spirit of him here.
I agree 100% with that, and that's what tipped me off too.
All right, let's clarify, because I thought what you were saying was it was actually physically Revenge of the Sith Anakin showing.
No.
Okay, yeah, okay. I'm
No,
like,
clearly
that's
because he's
ruled out.
changing back and forth between Vader and
No,
But
it's his
both of you were
Force.
like, that's 100% Anakin, and I'm
no,
like,
the
what?
essence.
No,
It's
I got
hit
you.
the same way Yoda shows up on Octo is Yoda.
Yeah, I got you.
Yeah,
I got
okay.
you.
Yeah.
I thought you were saying it was actually like the physical person
and it's
walking
funny
into the
'cause
world between worlds or whatever. and I was
Lacey,
like,
you brought up
"What?
like
no.
Filoni likes to pepper those things in there, and
Mhm.
he does, but like in this instance, it's clearly on purpose to let us know that no, that's Anakin.
This
This is
comment
Anakin.
too that he makes to her during the Clone Wars segment where he's just like, "Is that what you're on about? Like, is that what this is about?" When she's calling him
About
out
his
for like,
turn,
"Hey, you
yeah.
turned an evil person." He's like, "Really? We're gonna go back to this?
Right.
Like, hey, we're past
And
this type
and
thing,
him
but
not
we're not."
knowing him not knowing about the Siege of Mandalore because it was either when it happened exactly when he was rescuing Palpatine with Obi-Wan or
Yeah, he
something
wasn't
else.
there with her.
Yeah.
Yeah,
So
I love
I
all those
found that to be
details,
interesting
man.
too.
I'm going to like sit on this one for a long time of like trying to figure out. And I think it's supposed to be ambiguous, but the thing is like I just really trying to figure out what is this thing, you know what I mean? It's very
But it's
similar
not
to
Luke.
other.
It's not Luke going into the cave in Dagobah. It's not
Mm-mm.
Rey touching the lightsaber. This is
It's
this was real.
Rey laying down in Rise of Skywalker, hearing everybody talk to her, but her mind is there.
It's almost like Dave Filoni's like, you know what's better than having the glowy ghost sitting on a tree stump? Let's make the Force ghosts. Let's bring the people into this realm, and that's where they can interact with Force ghosts. You know what I'm saying? And like because Ahsoka like was close to death, she was sort of in the afterlife a little bit. That's
It's
how
where
I
we've
see it.
seen it in like a lot of other type of movies like this, like fantasy sci-fi stuff where they're like in purgatory, but they're not there yet. And the lead hero has to decide whether to go back or not. And they make
Yeah.
that choice. Then they're like, okay, see you later type thing. And they get like Harry Potter goes and sees Dumbledore at some point and then comes back.
Mhm.
It's kind of like that purgatory or that like, is it my time?
The thing about this is like I hear what you guys are saying. I'm not completely sold on anything, and it's just because I can't
fair.
quite
Yeah.
wrap my head around how that can be like the exact answer because I'm like but these things don't make sense. I don't have enough to fully speak on it yet, but I think over time as we contemplate and talk about this scene a little bit more, I think we can. I'll sort of come to some type of conclusion of how I can make sense of what is going on. There's just too much about him being light and dark and,
Mhm.
Physical. And then they go into these other worlds. But unlike the world between worlds before, when you walk through that door, you were really there. And in this
Yeah.
case, it seems like when they walk through that door, they're not really there because she's sort of like re-embodying herself and therefore making new actions so
Right.
that for like if they are in fact the same moment, then for a moment in the Siege of Mandalore, the young Ahsoka became the old Ahsoka. And a lot of that doesn't make sense because obviously
Yeah,
Anakin would have to be there too and stuff. Some of this doesn't make any sense. So
I
I'm
don't know
like,
that it
I
needs
got to
to,
wrap my head
but
around it over
yeah.
time. But where it's at right now, I'm fun being in the ambiguous, just the same as the characters are supposed to be.
Right.
Going like, what just happened? I don't know, but I experienced it.
Yeah.
And the sound of the world between worlds was so cool. From the sound of the weight of them being on that kind of like path to like the celestial music to like it sounds like waves crashing. There's so many layers that I would love to get a screenshot of like the sound design of like how many things they layered to make this space feel real, because it
Right.
made it feel so big. But it
Yeah.
not to the point that it was like goofy, like, oh, echo, echo, echo. It was just like it had a
Right.
lot of weight.
I like that too. Um,
Yeah.
and I can't help but think that when he was outlining this and then like starting the dialogue, he's like, I have to drop hints as to what I'm really doing here without completely beating people over the head with it. And it takes me back to the last episode when he says, "Hello, Snips," which to me proves that it's them and their connection. That could still mean it's in Ahsoka's head, but it doesn't mean that it was just the world between worlds creating Anakin. It's actually something personal Anakin created for her. So it rules out that
Mhm.
it's like the world between worlds creating Anakin. Then he
Mhm.
says, "I didn't expect to see you so soon," which to me says afterlife. He didn't
And he's been
expect her to
watching her.
Yeah,
Yeah.
he didn't expect her to die that soon. And then we know that this was a very short period of time because they go to, Hera goes right there to the ruins, then they go out to find her. It's not that long. And then in this episode, he says stuff like, I've heard that before, and you know that that's an organic memory only to Anakin. So to me, all those things are connecting the dots that this was the spirit of Anakin. This is sort of like this purgatory afterlife thing, and it was a moment for closure for Ahsoka to sort of be reborn. And we'll get to that in a minute and what that meant and how that was visually shown to us too. But there's a lot of other aspects in terms of the surface level stuff, the lightsaber fights, like you guys were saying, the twirls, and the actual fighting itself felt like a nice blend between original trilogy and prequels because it didn't feel too choreographed, but it also felt emotional and spiritual. And that shot very symmetrically of them right down the center, and it was a wide shot, and they're clashing their
Mhm.
Yeah.
sabers, reminding me of Obi-Wan and Anakin. It's just so enjoyable to ingest this because there's so much to take in, and it's so visually beautiful, and like you said, sonically.
It's one
We
of
could
the
probably
best
spend the whole
lightsaber battles ever.
we could probably spend the whole episode on this segment alone.
Yeah.
But I know there's
I
more to get to, but I'm not ready to turn yet.
I
To
want
that.
to mention one other thing too, because we're talking about the like, is it just like in her head, the vision thing? And I think that also has to be ruled out because Jason and
Right. So I
Hera
brought
are
this up
able to
from the
hear it.
comments.
Yeah.
I have to give Troy Rabbit Raccoon the credit because I did think this, but he said it, which was Jason heard Ahsoka fighting. Yeah, it actually happened. It wasn't a dream or anything else. I
Right.
agree. If he's
I
Right.
sensing it, then he has this connection to it happening, then it's real.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and Hera hears it too. She says good work.
And
So
Ahsoka was shocked when he said,
there
"Who are you fighting?"
absolutely is something happening, and it's not just happening to her, to Ahsoka. So
Yeah.
it's in front of them somehow. Yeah.
Yeah.
But it's crazy. I don't know.
It is. It really is. And I get that, some people may be like, all right, well, Filoni is just, he's got to start telling us stories beyond the Clone Wars and that sort of thing. But this is Ahsoka, and this is that story. So we are going to get more, like, we are eventually going to see Dave Filoni tell stories that aren't connected to this character and this stuff. But those
Right.
threads are so important to the relationship between her and Anakin, her journey as a character in general, and of course where her end game is, which we're not sure yet. But
Right.
uh, I can't imagine this having been executed any better in terms of this segment in particular. And I'm glad that they did like go right to it pretty much after the title comes up. And it wasn't like one of those like, when is it? When is it? When is it? He's like,
Yeah.
no, here it is. And
Yeah.
it's just so masterfully done. What'd you guys think of
It's
the
hard.
Oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, I'm just saying it's hard to not stop talking about it because it was
I
just
know.
so amazingly done. And I think that's one of the things that really stuck with me is I will openly admit I'm not the biggest prequel fan. I never have been. It's just I didn't connect with that. I connected with the original trilogy, so the prequels are very different from the original trilogy. It's just different. So, um to see Hayden back was just such an emotional experience, and it was for Obi-Wan too, but for this it was just different. It felt like his you know, beautiful moment that he gets to be the character he wants to be, and I saw people online immediately being like, "Clone Wars series now with young Ahsoka and Hayden, let's go."
No, no,
Um,
come on.
Look, if they did it, I wouldn't hate it. I'd be all for it. I don't care. I'd take it because Hayden's in it, and I nothing makes me happier than seeing him succeed and getting to play this character again because he
Oh, I
cared about
agree.
it so much. and he killed it. His fight scenes were incredible. His acting was perfect. I keep saying perfection. I'm trying not to say that, but it was. And I think that's one of the reasons I got so emotional, because I was just like, this is his moment. He's like, Obi-Wan was his moment too, but this is different. This is like he gets to be himself.
Yeah.
I wanted to
go ahead, James. I was just gonna say real quick, he got to be Vader without being in the costume. And he got to deliver lines as Vader, as Anakin. Like when he said incorrect, and then when he said you lack conviction, I'm pretty sure they blended James Earl Jones and his voice there in that moment, because it sounded, there was a reverberation to it. And the way he delivered it, I was thinking in my head, like, how would that sound as Vader? I'm like, that would sound just like Vader. So he's not only pulling off the Anakin stuff and playing a younger Anakin, he's pulling off being Vader too. Like Hayden Christensen is completely rounding out everything and doing things more than he ever had to do in the prequels. And it's just hats off to him, because he could have.
He's on board for everything. Yeah.
Yeah, he could have walked away, been like, screw that. I got treated like crap. I'm done with that stuff. And he's like, give it to me. I'm going to show everybody what it's all about. And he did it.
I was going to try to usher us into how this episode sort of is in two parts, where it's like all of this Ahsoka stuff in the World Between Worlds is like the first half, and there's the second half. But I was looking for when is that actual like middle point, and to the middle point is the moment when he's looking down, and when he looks back up, he's Anakin. That is the exact middle of the episode. It's kind of funny that it's like before the middle he's dark, and after the middle he's light. It's like within seconds.
And then Ahsoka completely changes too, because then she gets rescued, and then from there it's sort of like this reborn Ahsoka, which I've noticed, especially at the end of the episode. Like, of course she's wearing the white and all that stuff,
right?
But she wakes up without her headdress on, so it's almost like literally a rebirth. We haven't really seen her like that. But then also she's way more playful at the end and hopeful, and not as worried about like, we need that map to make sure this, and I'm not sure about this unless Sabine shows me this. And now she's like, we'll see. So she's believing in the Force again and being more playful about it with Hu Yang. And I'm liking that Filoni is taking that twist with her, because I think
less negative.
She was being too stoic.
As soon as she was washed over with the water, and then with light too, there's that symbol right there where she's like laying on the bed and the light.
More like playful.
Which, first of all, if I was pulled out of the water after almost dying, I would not look as good as Rosario Dawson did when she's laying on that bed.
She doesn't have hair. That's one thing.
She looked amazing. I was like, her skin, she's glowing, looks great.
Like Kristen Wiig in Bridesmaids when she goes to the bathroom and fixes her makeup and goes back to bed.
Just
wild. We were saying there, I was going to throw it into like, obviously there's a lot of like religious like baptism and like being reborn and other things like that all was in there too. Like specifically the baptism of like, she's there, she's being like, the water takes her over and then she gets pulled out of the water and all this. And it's like, then she's from that point on, like the white, happy, different light version, it's like, okay, there's obviously some connections to that, which is all pretty cool.
I think she's washing away the kind of issues she's had. It's the closure she needed with Anakin and with her own past, and basically what triggered her, which was the Baylan Skoll comments of like, all you are is death and destruction. And she's trying to say, I'm more than that. Which is what Anakin was trying to show her in so many words. You're not just this thing.
And this thing is, it's cool too, this episode, because, we didn't really get it specifically, but it's very reminiscent of like, say, Kanan going into the cave or, wherever he was, the temple. And he was dealing with all the issues of how he never really finished being a Padawan. And so he gets knighted and it becomes the next thing. It's like, he has to go through the trial and he has to have the Force spirit tell him, you're able to move on past this. And this was sort of Anakin coming back and saying, I'm here to finish your training. We never finished, So getting this closure and her moving on is sort of a way of saying that she's graduated Jedi Academy. You know what I mean? She's moved on, becoming just the Padawan and then walking away. Like he's there to
She
say.
also saw it through. Like that was the big thing that Hu Yang has said in the past. Like, oh, you walked away, and she's like, oh yeah, I walked away. I didn't want to do this. I didn't follow through Sabine. I didn't follow through the Jedi. This is something that she followed through. She
defeats Anakin.
She defeats him in a way without defeating him, obviously, but she takes a stand and makes a choice of, I'm not doing this. I'm going to stand here in your face and make this choice. I'm not going to walk away.
Right.
Or run away.
She also actually flips the lightsaber around and gets it right to his face. And she wins the fight. And then that's the point when he backs away and he's like, okay, and he turns from being Vader. So it's
she did kind of give up with the Baylan Skoll stuff. Like that episode, the last one, she looked like she was giving up. She was giving up with Sabine. She was giving up. She felt like this is it. We can't do anything after this. Like we just need to get the map and destroy it. Like I'm worthless. I'm not capable of helping here.
And her focus in that, I think I said this last week, her focus in that duel with Baylan was on everything but herself.
Right.
And she needed to have this experience for herself in order for her to move forward to help other people. And they always say that you gotta fix yourself first before you can help other people.
Put your mask on the plane before helping the person next to you. Yeah.
Now I know we have some super chats we want to get to, so I want to hear what other people have to say.
Yeah. So let's get to the super chats. First up is Luke. What up, Luke? How's it going, man? Count Pepto. Thanks for the super chat. He said, what's up, TRB? Does this time with Anakin in episode 5 make you guys view him differently as a character, maybe a little bit more? 100% for me. I feel like reinvigorated love for Anakin that I didn't have before. And I think it started with Obi-Wan Kenobi, the series first. Like I said, I'm not a big prequel person. I didn't really grow up with them. I grew up with the original trilogy, so it just doesn't like my thing. But I told you guys, like I was tearing up watching Hayden on screen. I thought he was amazing. And I want nothing more than to see more of him, honestly. So that's where I am. I don't know if you guys want to chime in.
I always liked Anakin. And thanks, Count Pepto. Appreciate it, buddy. Go
ahead.
Well, yeah, I just was gonna say, I just don't think Lucas wrote him very well from a dialogue perspective, and I think that hurt Hayden and it hurt the character a bit. And I think even George Lucas himself would say like he's not the greatest writer in the world, but he's a great storyteller. But in terms of like writing a dialogue, I think Filoni's much better, and we're seeing that here. So I think what this is doing is sort of like, well, people said the Clone Wars did, but this is like serving just the character better in general and adding layers and stuff like that. So I do like him more, but it's not one of those things where I didn't like Anakin. Now I do. But I'm more happy for Christensen than anything, because I've always thought he got a bad rap because I like other movies he's been in, especially Shattered Glass. Check that out if you haven't yet.
Little Italy.
I
do like him in Little Italy. Okay, that is a real movie, and he was amazing in it. He was really great.
I was going to say what John said, which is I think anytime that you have something that comes out after that bad thing or that negative thing or whatever that adds more layers or gives a positive light to that character, I think the Clone Wars did wonders for the prequels. I think a lot of people who watch the Clone Wars now go back and they watch the prequels and they're like, come on, they're not that bad. Like they enjoy them differently than the people who just watched them, didn't like them, and then obviously was like kind of done with Star Wars and didn't bother with the animated stuff. I think this is a little bit of that. It probably hits, like it gives more for people who didn't watch Clone Wars, so people watch the prequels, they watch this and they go, maybe there's a little part of this, like I could look differently on the prequels now. Maybe if I go back and rewatch it, I'll see a little bit of this in there too, and know that it's all part of the same world and stuff. Whereas most of us who are watching the show right now did do the Clone Wars thing. So this is like, what's 10 points when I already have 1,000? But for most people, like 0, like that 10 makes a big difference, or it could be 100 to them because it is something significant. So I think this does, for a lot of people, affect the prequels in the positive direction.
Right. Thanks so much for the super chat. Next up, we have Stubby One's back. What up, Stubby One? He said, do we see Anakin in Baylan's Order 66 flashback? So now, first of all, thanks for super chat. This is an assumption that we're going to see that. I don't know if we're going to see that. I don't think we need to. I think it's pretty clear that as in Balin, I know there's two he's in the sentence. He, as in Balin, has talked about Order 66 and how he disappeared. I think that was the explanation that we got. Maybe we might get something in a book or a comic later, but I don't think they're going to go into it. I think right now his mission is now what's next, not what happened. I think the what happened was the fight between him and Ahsoka. Was that him getting that out? I don't think it has anything to do with us seeing what happened to him. I think they're doing that a little too much, and they need to lay off that. Let's explain everybody's point of view during Order 66.
Yeah, I mean, we joke. Lacey, you joke about you've had enough of Palpatine. I've had enough of Order 66.
No, that's not a joke. I have, but you also have said this before, John. 100% that you were like, how many times are we going to see Order 66?
It's a lot. It's been a lot. Yeah.
I'm okay with moving beyond it, but then every time we get something for it, I go, okay, cool, new view.
Yeah.
Like I'm okay with moving past it, but you want to show me who rescued Grogu? All right, like I'm.
And
cool
I loved that
scene like that. Yeah,
they did it in Obi-Wan also. It's just
right.
It's enough already.
I think that this could be kind of interesting, but I do think what you guys have pointed out is that we already basically know everything about it. Is he went missing? He does in fact know about Anakin, so he did see him or encounter him. We don't need to see it. We already have that information. Few know or what he became later, whatever. It's like, so we know he knows. So I think we already have the pieces put together. We don't need to see it.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Great. Thanks for the super chat.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, Jared. Do you have anything else to say?
No.
Okay. Next we have Frank. What up, Frank? Thanks for the super chat. He said, I always thought Anakin still felt like a Padawan in Revenge of the Sith. I love how this episode made live action Anakin feel like the experienced, powerful Jedi we always saw in Clone Wars. So happy to be here tonight. We're happy to have you, man. I agree with this, Frank. I think that's what I kind of have trouble with Revenge of the Sith, is that he seems kind of whiny still. And then you see him in the Clone Wars and you're like, I know what they're trying to do here, but it doesn't really connect. Like, it's two different perspectives. Like, it just doesn't work. Whereas this episode of Ahsoka connected all those roles together, all those moments in a way that you're like, this is the same character. And I think that's what worked so well for me anyway.
Yeah, it's definitely a tricky thing because you go from him being a Padawan, and then the next one he's like a knight or whatever, and so he sort of graduated off screen. But then it's weird because you go into the Clone Wars and you basically start that with the movie or whatever, and he's getting his Padawan. So he's like, wait, again, like when did he ever like graduate from being a Padawan? We never saw that. Now they have since explained it, and I forget where, it was in a book or something. But we kind of saw that process happen. But again, it's like a sliver between this and that. And you never really get that closure of seeing him move up to the next level, the next grade or whatever.
And Frank said he's happy to be here. We're happy you're here too, Frank. Thanks, buddy.
Yes.
Appreciate it, man. I think it's also okay to just step outside of the story for a bit and acknowledge the fact that George told those stories, and then he's like, you know what though, I kind of want to do this now, and then he did it, and I think that's okay too.
Oh yeah,
I forgot we have pictures.
It's totally okay.
I've been so excited about the episode.
For
next up is Harry. Oh, Harry, how's it going, man? He said shadow thanks for the super chat. He said shadow in the title is reference to shadow work. I don't know what shadow work is. I might be being dumb right now.
Well, I
took it as Anakin, shadow warrior. Jason doesn't see who it is. He feels it lurking in the shadow warrior. That's how I took it.
Yeah. There's a 1980 Kurosawa film called Kajimusha, which translates to shadow warrior.
Oh, that's cool.
And Francis Ford Coppola and George Lucas were listed as producers on it.
John did his research tonight.
How you doing? I don't know. I don't know if this is just I don't know if this is just a nod to that, because obviously Lucas was inspired by Kurosawa and Joseph Campbell. But the plot of that movie, I guess, is that an emperor No, a warlord's body is taken over by a double after his untimely death. So I don't know if this was like Ahsoka dies prematurely, Anakin shows up, and he's sort of like finishes what's going on. It's like a light nod to that, but I think it might just be a nice, nod to Kurosawa, and also obviously George Lucas's love for Kurosawa and stuff like that. So
And just in general, like if Anakin is the warrior in the shadows, it's kind of
right.
cool.
Yeah, that's how I took it, was that he's the shadow warrior. But Harry, thank you so much for the super chat. I'm sorry, I will never read your full name, but we're happy to have you here. Next is not Harry, but Ari with this first super chat ever. Thank you so much. Said thoughts on the Anakin Mortis God theory. And then he put the face emoji. Look, we were talking about this a little bit offline, which I said, when people think Filoni, they think Rebels, Ahsoka, World Between Worlds, Mortis arc. Like, that's the immediate thing. It's like, how does this all work? So I'm gonna let you guys chime in here because I have no idea, to be honest.
I have nothing on this. It's way too much to wrap my head around, and I don't know how far Filoni would want to take the main character of George Lucas's saga and start doing stuff like this with him. So I don't know that this is going to be a thing. I haven't really heard the theory though, so I don't know.
I mean, in general, I think my understanding of what Ari's talking about here is that in the Mortis stuff, the father wanted Anakin to replace him. He wanted him to be the new father. He, at the end of it all, he gets his mind wiped. And the father has to reconsider things because the son did bad things and betrayed all this. So he rethinks it and just wipes it all. So it never ended up really happening. But there's also all these connections with Ahsoka and the daughter, because Ahsoka died and the daughter gave her life to Ahsoka so that she could live. Right. And there's the owl and all this that follow around. So,
but I don't. What's the God theory though?
Well, the God theory is that he's the father, she's the daughter, and then there's the son. It's who's the son? It's if he is a retelling, a repurposed version of that story, then he is the Mortis God, because maybe when he dies, he then becomes the Mortis God. He replaces the other one.
Yeah, I don't know how I feel about that. Until it happens, I'm gonna say I have no idea.
Yeah, I don't know.
I think it's a cool connection, like Star Wars, it rhymes sort of thing. But again, the missing component here is the son, unless you want to say, but it sort of doesn't make sense. That there's the missing component is the father, and he's the son, Ahsoka, he's the dark, Ahsoka's the light, but he's the one in the middle, and he's the father, and he's the master. So he's more likely the father than anything, but then we're missing a son. So I don't know.
Well, speaking of son, Jason had his moment this episode, and that was one of my favorite parts. This is typical me. I had 6 favorite parts in this episode, and one of the favorite moments was when he tells Hera to listen to the water, and they do this beautiful shot where he comes into focus, she comes into focus, and he's really focusing on what he's hearing, and you hear the lightsabers start to come in. Again, the beautiful sound work on this episode, but I think he really shined here, and I kept being like, man, when are they going to train him? What are they doing with this kid? This kid is so impossibly powerful. What are we doing?
He really feels like Spectre 7, he feels like he has become part of this group. Does that make sense? Part of one of the Rebels core characters. Right, we just didn't really know him in that show. As the show progresses and we get to the end, and there's a Zeb and an Ezra and a Sabine and a Hera, and he's standing there, it's they are part of that group.
Yeah, I think he is a good sort of just from a show standpoint, not in story, just a manifestation of the spirit of Kanan in a way.
Yeah.
So there's going to be his tendencies there too. But I think the kid is doing a tremendous job. Just to put that out there. I think he's doing a wonderful job, and I like that he's being utilized, and he's not just there's the kid running around in the background, and that's Jason
Easter egg.
Yeah, right. He's gonna. There's something more. I'm not saying he's going to be like Bran Stark in Game of Thrones type of thing, but I do think there's going to be importance to him, and I know people have joked like, "Oh, I hope he doesn't go train with Luke." I'm like, yeah, neither do I. But
I said that.
yeah, I liked that. I'm pretty sure, because I watched it only twice, but I'm pretty sure Kiner slipped in a very slow version of the Force theme. Am I making that up?
Yes.
Nope,
Yes,
that's
they
there.
did.
Oh, they did. Okay, yeah. I thought that was really well done too.
Which
And
Danny brought up in the chat. They're releasing a lot of the soundtracks on Friday. On the
oh, really? Oh,
yeah.
okay, cool, very cool. Yeah, I've been listening to
He-
the end credits a lot. I love it.
on repeat.
This
Yeah.
is the first time I noticed that he's, I mean, I don't know if he had it earlier, but like he's got the Kanan shoulder pad in this one very
Oh, yeah.
prominently.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Jason is sort of the, how shall I say this? The baby Groot to the original Groot. Like
That
you could
works.
argue that it's like, you know, oh, that one died and you know, and it's just sort of like this is the younger version of him, but it's sort of like a reborn. It's not really a reborn. I'm not getting into that, but I'm saying just for the sake of like the crew being together, like he's the son of, because the dad passed away, but he obviously is so similar to Kanan in the sense of he looks the same. He sort of acts the same. He has Force sensitivity and he's going to be like the other Jedi in the group. It's like, yeah, all those things are Kanan. He's very Kanan. And it was great to hear his name in live action too. That was another thing. We've heard his voice before in live action, but it was
And
nice
Carson
to
David was
hear.
just like, all right.
Yeah, I loved that. He's so good. I love him in the scene where they're like, we're reporting you right now, like you need to tell us, and he's like, fair point. Like,
Yeah.
I don't know what to tell you.
He's like, I disagree with you, but what am I gonna do?
Part of me
like,
does want him to just be like, okay, see you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. He wants nothing to do with the mystical stuff. He's like, oh, okay, that's cool.
I
Fire
can't
up
help but
Kanan.
wonder though, because they first of all they brought up Leia, which is an awesome little Senator Leia is holding down the fort. Typical Leia, she's causing problems, but like
Mhm.
doing the right thing. But I am very interested to see, which I was one of the people that believes this. When is Mando coming into the show? Because you have Carson Teva there, and now I have the feeling that he's not. And I thought he was, because Jon Favreau is involved in the series too, that wouldn't they bring Mando in at some point? He's working with Carson Teva. What's going on here? And I thought that like this would have been the moment like he shows up with Carson and they're all here to help. And he didn't show up. And I was like, oh, maybe he's not going to show up in this series. But I don't know. I don't know what's going on. But
You've got 3 episodes left, and I don't really know at what point he comes in to like save the day. I think
just mention or something.
Yeah. I mean, it is fair that he could show up in that last episode as the sort of post credit, not post credit, but you know what I mean? Like, oh, now that we're back, I want to introduce you to my friend. And it's
right.
like, cool.
It's the quick, the
I get well, yeah, exactly. You get it real quick.
I think that would I think that would sap the feeling and vibe of this show though. For
I
some
agree.
reason,
I agree.
Yeah, I do too. We're just coming up with the
this
speculation
show feels
there.
too spiritual and too mystical that like Mando's zooming in with Ludwig music and the N1 and stuff. I'd be like, what are you doing here? Get out of here.
You can't
I
say
love
that.
you, dude.
I'm just interested. I think in my personal connection, I don't think Carson Teva is the real connection. I think it's Sabine and Mando or Sabine and Bo. Like when we get into that connection, that I feel is
Mandalorians, you're saying?
Yeah, I feel like Sabine might be the connection there to bring him into that world. But Carson Teva is like, I don't know, like a glue or something that's definitely like, or a grease that's making it all work.
Also, he's the one that will go against orders to do what's right. And I think that that's ultimately our favorite characters in Star Wars always tend to do. They get some type of directive and they go, I'm not going to do that. Yeah, exactly. What do you guys feel about the Pinocchio moment at the end where Ahsoka's like, we're going in this whale. We're getting out of here. Very Pinocchio to me.
Slow. It was like very slow. But
and this we can get into obviously the Ahsoka the White. I saw everybody talking about Gandalf. We've talked about Gandalf here before. I agree, it's very similar to Lord of the Rings. Great White.
It was fun. It was cool. The cooler part I thought was seeing Jason referring to Ezra and it reminding him of that story. It's almost like it adds such a realism to Star Wars, because you have Jason Syndulla who didn't experience what Ezra did, but someone had told him that story, and seeing Ahsoka enter the Purrgil's mouth in her ship and him saying, "That reminds me of that story you told me about Ezra." And I'm like, Star Wars is real. This is real. Like, it was so cool. Like, it had so many like layers to it. I just thought that moment I thought was so cool.
I loved all the Purrgil stuff. I thought it was so fun. I thought it's one of those examples of like creatures of Star Wars really getting a moment to shine. And I said it earlier, but like it just had this magical moment, right? Kind of like if we're talking about Lord of the Rings, like Gandalf with the eagles, like type of thing. Like you're just using creatures in the universe to help you along the way. I love that whole aspect. There was something so hopeful about it, and I loved the exchange between Ahsoka and Hu Yang, where he's just like, "We don't even know where this whale is going," and she goes, "It is what it is. We'll end up where we end up." And I thought that was just such a beautiful moment, because I feel like I'm definitely the type of person that like gets so nervous and anxious and scared of like kind of open-ended, ambiguous. Well, that's not the word. I just slaughtered that word. Ambiguity.
Ambiguity.
Yeah. When it comes to like things that I don't know what's going to happen. And I felt super hopeful and or inspired by Ahsoka just being like, you know what? It's going to end up how it ends up. And then we go from there and we figure it out, but we have nothing else to do. So let's take the risk. And I think that shows how she's matured from that world between worlds moment, because she wouldn't have taken that risk before, I don't think. She's now doing it because she has nothing else to lose.
Yeah, she believes in the Force again. She's like leaving her fate up to the Force. She's letting the Force decide things, as opposed to being like, we need that map. I need to make sure Sabine's
she's regained her faith,
right?
You know.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Another thing about the space whale creature aspect of it is I was just talking to you, John, and on the Monday show. It's not exactly the same thing, but I got the feeling a little bit of what I was describing when I said, like, I hope we get a Bendu character, because I want to see that big, massive creature and it somehow being part of the story to a point where like, well, we need to go speak to, Azeroth or whatever, and it's like this thing and it's this creature, and then it gives you this wisdom or cool information, and then you move on. Like, it's just like this, it lives in the pit of despair or whatever. Seeing Ahsoka walk up to the creature on the top of her ship and like reach out and have this sort of conversation as it slowly like shows its massive size, and you see a side shot of her like tiny standing in front of this big thing, and then she comes back in, she's like, I talked to it and it said we can hitch a ride. Go. I'm like, that it didn't talk. It wouldn't have been cool if it talked, but the point of what I was describing was like, it would be cool to see a creature that's like, hey, get in or whatever, and it's like you get this cool voice. Obviously that would be really stupid in the sense of the Purrgil, but it was the same idea, the same vibe, right?
I'm going to throw something wild out there, and I think that this is correct. So when I'm right, I hope to get a bunch of high fives online. They announced recently at the Destination D23 event that Ahsoka was coming to Star Tours. I bet the Star Tours level, you fly through Purrgils.
Oh, that's a good call.
Yeah,
yep, like you're in the ride, like, whoa, Purrgils, whoa. I'm sure that's what's going to happen.
And everybody in the thing is like, what are Purrgils?
Exactly.
What are these things? This is so
I'm just going to do James's Purrgil voice. Hey, everybody.
It's a little Dory Whaley, yes.
Yeah. But it was as soon as it happened, I was like, Pinocchio? This is very Pinocchio, like getting in the whale and then going to your destination.
And the Purrgil looked
Jonah
great again. Like the visual effects in the show is elite level, better than Andor, in my opinion, because they're doing creatures and mystical stuff, like, and it looks great. But we touched on this and we didn't talk about it enough, but I really am just completely 100% convinced, as if I wasn't before, but the Kiner music and that classical Star Wars score elevates scenes in this show. And I started thinking as I was watching some of the shows, I'm like, if this scene had like Ludwig Göransson over it, it probably wouldn't raise up enough as this is right now. And
Kiner's making me cry.
I really do
100%.
think
Yeah.
I really do think Star Wars needs to have classical scores like this. And it takes so many of these scenes and adds emotional weight to it in such a way that you're not even saying like the music's doing this to me. It's blending in with the scene perfectly. And I know that he's been with Filoni for a long time, so it's sort of like a Elton John, Bernie Taupin thing. They just like left hand, right hand. I think it's perfect. So I hope Kiner and his, whoever his kids get the opportunity to score the Filoni movie too.
I
And
think
that is a perfect fit.
I think he's totally
Yeah.
going to do the movie.
I feel like I'm never like trying to downplay the Mandalorian score or whatever. And I know it's like iconic. You can say like 6 parts of it and people know it immediately. But the thing is like from day one, I went into that score and I go, I'm not digging this 100%. This doesn't feel Star Warsy to me. It feels cool. I like it. It's neat, but there's something
It felt like
here
Black
that doesn't-
Panther.
It's
'cause
not
he did-
quite right.
Yeah, he
Right.
did Black Panther, so it felt very like cool, like Black Panther, but it didn't.
But I
feel
think
Star
it's
Wars.
taken people a long time to get to that because it's been Mandalorian's amazing. It's a perfect theme and blah, blah, blah. And we love it and all this other stuff. But now out of context, we're starting to see these other songs and other scores come along and we're like, whoa, the classical Star Wars John Williams Z style fits Star Wars better than the other stuff. So
It makes it more cinematic 100% because these episodes to me, especially this one, it felt bigger than what it was. Like I felt like I wasn't just watching a TV show. I felt like this was a bigger moment within Star Wars that was building to something that's, we're getting there type thing.
yeah, I love
which
the
is the
outro
movie
music. Yeah. That outro music, like right in the middle of it, it cuts to the like slow, like building thing with the horns and stuff. And I'm like, this is so huge. It's journey music. And when you're going on this journey, it's like, oh, it's just so beautiful.
And the way they worked in Vader's themes throughout the whole thing and all these other little moments, it's like those little kind of nostalgic few notes that you immediately get pulled into it and you're like, oh my God, I'm in this.
Yeah.
Yeah. So quick thoughts on what you think is going to go down next week before we get out of here. And then I know we have a couple super chats too.
We do have some super chats. I have no idea. I'm so bad at speculating at this point because every time I've speculated, I've been horribly wrong. But I would probably say that we're going to see Thrawn and Ezra, which I thought we were going to see this episode. But now that I know that it was Anakin, I understand why Dave took that episode. But I think we're going to see Thrawn, which from the trailers, I believe at this point we've seen every piece of footage from the trailers is what people were saying, except the Thrawn stuff, which Thrawn is walking out onto the Eye of Sion. So he's going to show up there eventually. It's the same gold arch that Morgan Elsbeth, always mess up her name, Elsbeth is standing on as well. So it's coming. I think Thrawn.
I wonder if we start there because we saw the Purgle go into hyperspace.
They leave it open-ended? Like, oh, we don't know where Ahsoka is type thing?
Well, or we either pick up with them traveling to again, or we pick up with here's where they're going, and here because we haven't seen Sabine this episode or Baylan Skoll, so we got to see what's going on with that because we need to refresh what's happening with Sabine's mentality right now and her choices, and then I do think we'll get Thrawn because I mean I love Favreau and I love Filoni, but they're like, so we have these great villains and you're just not going to see them at all. Just like, come on, man, give us Thrawn. Let's go.
I've been saying this the whole series. I think the main villains are Baylan and Shin, and Thrawn is the overarching villain that you're only going to get a taste of in this show. So I'm thinking Thrawn is teased in episode 7 and they show him a little bit and then they show a little bit more in episode 8 and that's really it. And I might even go as far as to say I don't think Ezra's in the show, and if he is, he's like the very 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 end of 8. Because again, like we went into the show and we were thinking, oh, it's Thrawn and Ezra, we're gonna get it, and I'm like, I don't think they're in the show that much. I think they would have been on the tour and talking.
I think
the first excited to play the characters and stuff.
You might be right.
They're not in it.
I'm beginning to think we might not see Thrawn next week. I hope we do. But I really have this weird feeling that they're gonna debut Thrawn in live action in a very memorable way, and I think that way is he's going to board the ring, Eye of Sion, right?
Eye of Sion, yeah.
He's going to board the Eye of Sion, and
you guys remember Scions?
Eye of Sauron, I believe, is actually what it's called. No, I'm just kidding.
Was that like a cube type car? Eye of Sion.
The Scion?
I don't know.
Yeah.
But I think he's going to board that thing, and he's going to kill Morgan Elsbeth. I think that's going to be the first thing he does. He's going to be like, I don't need you anymore.
Which it's like so typical, right? Like, oh, you've made it. I've gotten to you. And they're like, you're dead. Goodbye.
Or he's going to tell Baylan, he's like,
why
Baylan,
kill her, though? What has she done wrong?
Just because he can. Because he doesn't need her anymore.
I guess.
He doesn't need her.
Disposable.
Yeah, he doesn't need her. He exhausted everything he needed from her. The magic. He pulled all that off. And he's going to be like, all right, Baylan, do what I told you to do. And he's going to like.
What if Thrawn kills Baylan and Shin?
I don't think so.
He'll keep them around because they have the Force and they look like good people.
I think we are meant to be put into such pain that Baylan Skoll is going to survive this show, and we're not going to know what to do with him after that. Unfortunately,
I'm going to play around with this theory of Thrawn being the one who actually kills Baylan and Shin, or maybe not Shin as well, but like Baylan. But like, I think there could be something to the fact that like you need this villain to be the biggest, craziest, ultimate, baddest person that you can be. And that would be killing off your Force users, the most powerful people in the room, because they're disposable. Whereas I think Morgan Elsbeth has been doing her job for a long time. So I don't know why I can't come up with the motivation there other than, just to get rid of her.
Well, Thrawn he's a military guy, and maybe he doesn't like the idea of having this witchcraft around for too long. And especially she knows maybe she knows
or she oversteps. That's the other thing. Like she'd be like, hey, I demand this. And then he's like,
witches don't survive fantasy stories. They just don't.
I like this idea that like Baylan has the Force and Thrawn like threatens him and he's like, are you serious? Like I could kill you in an instant. And then Thrawn has like maybe the creatures or something that like showcases that he can't be affected by the Force,
Oh, those like salamander thingies. What are they called?
I don't remember what they're called, but like that could be something that it could showcase how powerful Thrawn is by having Baylan showcase a lot of power and then try to go up against Thrawn, and he can't, he can't overcome him because Thrawn is stronger because he outthought Baylan, who's been very methodical this whole series so far. I don't know. Yeah. I think it could be interesting.
Yes, Salamari.
It's a lot of ways to go. All right, let's get to the super chats and then give our final thoughts and hop on out.
Yes. So first up, we have a super chat from Jones Vibes. Loving the vibes, Jones. Thanks for the super chat. He said, could Jason end up being Ahsoka's future apprentice instead of Sabine? I felt like there was a partial setup there. I agree with you. I think the hug, Jason's here was like kind of like, and the fact that he had the power to like sense what was going on. And there was a moment where he's like, who are you fighting? And Ahsoka was like really intrigued and like wanted to answer. And Hera kind of cut her off. I feel Hera was like, nope, we're not doing this. No Force. Nope. Because I think Hera is nervous of how powerful Jason is. What do you guys think?
I would be surprised if they abandon the Ahsoka Sabine thing. I think that's going to end in a good way. And I think
it ended when she went with Baylan Skoll.
No, well,
I think when she made the selfish choice of like not listening to her master, that kind of ended.
Well, Sabine's not going to be a villain, so she's going to realize her wrongs and come back. So I think that's going to be repaired. I think Jason, it would be the most touching thing if it was Ezra who got to train Jason. Talk about Star Wars and the
because the father sort of teaches the son sort of teaches
the son becomes the father.
Yeah, exactly.
In a different way. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that makes a lot of sense. The only way I see the Sabine Ahsoka thing ending, it could still be like Sabine saying like, I'm not stopping, but it's not for me. I'm Mandalorian or something like that. Like coming to her own conclusion.
Sort of like what
Okay,
Leia
that's
did.
fair.
It still feels
Yeah.
strange that this is even a thing in the first place. You know, I'm not really sure what the point of it being, if the ultimate goal is for Sabine just to say, I don't want to be a Jedi. I'm
Exactly.
Mandalorian. You
That's
know, so
why I
it's
think
like,
it's gonna get
what are
picked
we
up
doing?
again.
Yeah.
Yeah. Thanks, Jones. Loving the vibes. Next is Semper Fi Danny. What up, Danny and Mark, who usually watches with Danny? What up, Danny? She said, so much to love about this show. What amazed me the most, and maybe a bit underrated, is the force abilities Jason demonstrated. Hearing the world between worlds, mind blown. My little rebel's Kanan loving heart did a beat. I don't think it's downplayed at all. I think this was pretty much, they gave him a big moment there to be like,
Yeah.
look, this kid has power.
Yeah.
And the whole
Thank you,
call
Danny.
out to Kanan Jarrus from Hu Yang, who explains
Mm-hmm.
it. And Carson Dave was like, okay, whatever.
That's cool, man.
Awesome.
Guy sounds
Thanks,
great.
yeah. Next is Stubby One again. What up, Stubby One? Thanks for the super chat. He said, theory, Balin's goal is to kill Thrawn, but Ezra stops him like throne scene in Return of the Jedi. Thanks for the reviews. First live attended 10 out of 10 Rosarios. No, thank you,
Hey.
man. Thanks
Thank
for
you.
being
Thank
here
you.
with your
So
cute
cool.
pup pick.
Appreciate it.
Balin's
Stop
goal is
it.
to kill Thrawn. I don't think it is, man. I think there's something going on there that we don't know yet, because he's talking about everything like we've talked about this a bunch. I know James and John have commented on about how it's like the mystical fairy tale stuff. Like, oh, it's a thing he heard that now he knows exists.
Yeah.
I don't know what you guys think, but I think it's not Thrawn. I think Thrawn's just a piece of the puzzle.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't think Balin's out to kill Thrawn based on what he's been saying, and I don't think Balin's the type of person to lie to his apprentice for reasons. I think he's a
Right.
deliberate speaker and an honest speaker. And she said, "What about us if Thrawn returns?" And he said, "Power more than you could possibly imagine," or something.
But
like
also keep in mind here, because I'm still working on this Thrawn Balin theory.
Oh, boy.
Also keep in mind here that Balin, when he was questioned about how the right thing to do is to start a war, he's like, I'm not starting a war. I'm doing this. Thrawn's the one who's going to start a war. He's
Right.
acknowledging that the bad thing will happen because of his actions. So
Yeah.
I think if you wanted to go down the route of Balin, like sort of playing in the middle and maybe like at the end of his life doing the right thing or being somewhat redeemed or something, it could be that he recognizes that Thrawn is as bad as he feared. And so he tries to stop him, and Thrawn says
If
no.
Balin gets redeemed, it's the worst character in the history of Star Wars.
So sad.
Wait, think
I
of
don't think
another
he's-
ending for your
I
villains,
don't
please.
think he's like a bad guy, though. He's clearly playing the villain.
That's why
but I think
Palpatine
he's so
keeps
in the
coming back,
middle.
folks. I got news for you. They keep making these villains, and then they're like, "He's good again." Just kidding. And then they're like,
Get
"Who
him
can be
outta here.
evil?" And they're like, "Sheevy babes, bring him back."
All right, thanks, W1. Last but not least is Joseph. Thanks for the super chat. He said, what do y'all think Ezra will be like? He must have changed in some way, right? More or less powerful, at peace? I have no idea. I
Yeah.
have no idea what Ezra... I think we're all going to be in some type of shock of where he's at, because he can't be the exact same person. And again, we brought this up earlier. We don't know if there's been a time jump for them. Like, we
Yeah,
don't
right.
know what the time difference is in this other galaxy, or is it the same time, or has he been in limbo? Like, we don't know. We don't know what.
I don't know how you feel, James. I just don't want Ezra to be like despondent and like disconnected and like Lukified on Octa. We've seen that.
Oh, Last Jedi Luke, yeah.
I want him to be Ezra, and maybe like he's imprisoned, or like I don't want him to be too far from what he was. That's just my opinion.
My
Imagine
only
he's
thought,
dead the whole time he's been dead.
Oh, come on.
I'm just saying, like, imagine
think
all
they
these
can,
people
yeah.
are hoping for Ezra to be back, and it's just like, oh, he died like day
Filoni's
2.
just like, burn you all.
It's like
I
day
think-
2, he's gone.
I think that my thought of Ezra is you're going to get the same Ezra that you saw in the last episode of Rebels. The one that like has the understanding, gets it. He was a kid. He's not a kid anymore, and he understands his purpose. I hope that they Well, I don't know. I'd be fine with it, I guess. But like, what you're saying, John, is you hope they don't take him on an arc where he has to like relearn everything for everybody.
Or find his
yeah.
faith again, like Ahsoka just did.
Yeah, like we
I feel
just
like
keep
that's what
hearing
Rebels
about how
was
great
for.
Commander Bridger was and how he saved all these people and stuff. And
Yeah.
then when you finally meet him, he's like Luke Skywalker on Octo. You know, it's like, okay, we kind of don't want that. You know what I mean? And again, we've talked about
Well,
how I
we
think
didn't want
this
that
is
either
sort of-
as Luke fans.
Well, I know that's what I'm saying. It's like I think that Dave Filoni has the opportunity with these shows to sort of make the sequels better, and so he can sort of give back on the things that we didn't get in the prequels in these shows.
Yeah.
I do have 2 quick other comments I want to bring up just because I thought they were interesting. So Luke Count Pepto asks, Lacey, will we get a dope Anakin World Between Worlds Black series? Luke, it's funny you brought that up because Hasbro released today that they brought out an Obi-Wan Darth Vader fighting set, and I was like, you're a little late for that. But Hasbro,
Guys, did you see the new episode?
Yeah.
It was so exciting. Here it is. It's like, what? No.
Hasbro PulseCon's coming up on September 22nd. They're going to make a lot of announcements for Star Wars. I guarantee you're going to get a lot of Ahsoka announcements that day. And then Micro More. What?
Slow bro meme. Do you remember that?
Yes.
Where like it's like Hasbro. Hey, we put out the new cool show.
Yeah. Micro Mori says James Purgle voice reminds me of the narwhal from the movie Elf. Bye, buddy. Hope you find your dad. Fun fact: that's Jon Favreau.
Favreau, yeah.
That is Favreau saying that.
What if it did that? What if we see just a quick section of the Purgle pulling away from the ship as they exit the mouth, and he says, "Goodbye, Ahsoka. Hope you find Ezra."
And it is Jon Favreau.
It wouldn't surprise me if Favreau did the sounds of the Purgle.
Oh. That'd be hilarious. Anyway, you guys are killing it tonight in the comments, and just in general, thanks for being awesome, because it's hard sometimes to go through episodes like this that are so action packed and so crazy, and then you guys given little like sentences here and there, and I'm like, oh my god, yes, that right.
Yeah.
So it helps us go through stuff.
It's a good time. And we want to thank everybody, whether you join us live or you're listening on your favorite pod app or you're watching on YouTube after the fact. Thank you very much. We hope you enjoyed this show. Let us know what you think in the comments, and of course, enter the giveaway contest for the Chatterback Chopper. So you want to leave a comment on the video itself of what you think is going to happen next week on part 6 of Ahsoka, or quote tweet our post on X or Twitter, whatever you still call it, with your thoughts and predictions on what's going to happen next week as well. And also, if you want to tell people, your followers, to watch and listen to TRV, that's pretty cool too. But enter and have fun. But most importantly, we hope everyone had a good time with us, because we did. It always flies by. An hour and a half, felt like 30 minutes. Felt like we could have unpacked a lot more. And we will as we move forward, of course, as we are 3 episodes away from the end of season 1 of Ahsoka. I don't know. But thank you to everybody. So make sure you do subscribe, spread the word, all that good stuff. And a special shout out to our patrons, patreon.com/resistance broadcast. If you like what we do here at TRB and are able to support us, tiers start at just $5. Hop over there, check them out. And if you are a patron, we're about to hop over right now to Patreon and do our live Q&A, where you can ask us any questions about anything, not just Star Wars. And it always leads to a good time.
Which, fun fact, the last one, someone had asked us what we were like in high school. Adam and Garrett are in the comments right now, who went to high school with me, who could vouch for me saying how annoying I was. Those are the types of things you learn on Patreon. So Adam and Garrett, thanks for watching. But yeah.
So head to patreon.com/resistance broadcast, sign up, join us, and we appreciate it. And then a special shout out has to go out to our generals and spice runners: Carmelo, John RISI, Jetta Rosewater, Frank Grande, Darth Hurricane, Nick Kratz, Chris Morales, Brian Smith, Matt Chitty, Danny, Mike Mori, Matt Heath, Brendan McLaughlin, Count Pepto, Sneaky Zebra, Aaron Ellington, Colin Cormier, Jolton Jedi, DiMaggio, Diana, and Dave Hornack. And the Spice Runners: David Probus, Neil Shaw, Kendall Gelner, Andrew Staley, Jeremy Myers, Michael Fry, and the Fort Worthian. Thank you all so much. For me, Johnny Hoey on X, Threads, Blue Sky, and my movie podcast, Just Like the Movies. We're doing Death Proof next. Quentin Tarantino, Kurt Russell. Lacey, how about you?
People can find me on all the social media channels at Lacey Gilleran, on TikTok at It's Lacey Gilleran. And as a funny little moment, last night I was showing Matt some of the coolest moments in the episode, including a moment with Hera, and he said, "Wow, I thought Hera died in Guardians of the Galaxy."
Yeah.
I was like, I'm not even kidding, guys. I did a spit take. I had to wipe off my desk because I was like, "What?"
Because she's green.
but
But Gamora
fun
doesn't
fact-
die. Go ahead.
Oh,
Well,
I thought she died and then came
She
back.
She
does.
died and comes back, but he's so far behind in that too. that
Oh yeah.
I realized.
Oh,
But fun fact, young Gamora is the
Is-
person who played
Yes.
young Ahsoka in this episode, which is
Yes,
crazy.
Ariana Greenblatt. Yep.
Uh-huh.
nice.
So that's kind of
I
wild. Good
laughed
for
so
her.
hard. I was like, "Oh my god."
She found her niche. Play the young version of popular character.
Yeah, she killed it.
All right, James, where are you at?
Oh, X and Instagram both at Myra Trunks.
Right on. All right. Me and James will be back with you on Monday, where we're gonna check in with those upcoming Star Wars movies that obviously everything's on hold right now from a production standpoint because of the strikes, but the future of Star Wars, we're going to take a look at what the three of us have put together in terms of how likely those officially announced movies are going to happen. We're going to run through them all and have some fun with that.
It's gonna
But
be me, you, and Dunstan all checking in.
Dunstan will be checking in.
Who's
Patrons,
Dunstan?
there's a movie called Dunstan Checks In. It's about a monkey who works at a hotel.
Oh, okay.
I worked at a video store. I remember. I know all that garbage. Anyway, patrons, we'll see you in a bit at our Q&A in about a few minutes. Just have to run to the bathroom real quick. Everyone else, have a great week, great weekend, and we'll see you next time right here on the Resistance broadcast. See you around, kids.